Building off of last week's video, where you're going to be using editing software, let's talk about actually taking the photo first, because that's where you have to get it right, at least close enough to where you have enough data to work with, especially with a raw image. Now, the three main ingredients to a properly exposed photo is going to be your ISO, your f-stop, and your shutter speed. Your ISO is going to be the sensitivity of your sensor to light, and that's something where you normally have a native of 100 or 200 being the lowest. You're going to use those in highlight situations, meaning like a broad daylight situation, or if you have you're at a ball field and they have very large amount of light on the field. A lower ISO means that you're going to have less noise or grain in the photo. A higher ISO will introduce grain or noise, and that just makes things look like it has like dots all over it. And there are ways to reduce noise, however it ends up smoothing out whatever you're looking at to be almost like have no texture whatsoever. That's why everyone seems to like lower ISOs, because you'll have a more clean image to work with. That brings us to the next setting, which is your f-stop, which is going to have your depth of field. So if you're at an f1.8, say you focus on someone's nose, maybe their ear will be slightly out of focus. But if you go up just a few, maybe f2.8, you might get the whole head in focus, but the background isn't as blurry as 1.8. But if you're shooting something that's landscape, you're probably going to shoot at f11, f16, f22 is about the highest you can go, and that puts the entire thing in focus. And the last would be the shutter speed. If you did 1/8,000th of a second, it would capture very quick motion and it'd leave it frozen. If you lower the shutter speed, say to 1/30th of a second, you would most likely have to use a tripod for that. That way you wouldn't have your own hands moving, but you'd be able to see whatever subject is in front of you actually blurred whenever you're taking the photo. A lot of that comes down to also depending on what you're looking for. If you end up going into a situation where you're wanting to get people blurred, you're going to have something like an ND filter to cause there to be less light, or you could up the f-stop on your lens. And if we were to call this something, I think I'd call it the exposure triangle. Because if you adjust one setting, it's going to have to adjust the other ones in another direction. Because if you end up having a higher shutter speed, you may have to increase the ISO to accommodate for the light. Or if you needed to have a higher f-stop, you might have to adjust the shutter speed to be lower in order to get what you're looking for as the proper exposure. And this is just the last tip, is there is a little exposure guide on the left-hand side of your camera, and you'll see that it looks like a little gauge. You want to have that right in the middle with the arrow. I just wanted to go over some of these basic settings for your camera, because if you don't come to the program with good settings on the photo, then you're going to end up having a poorly edited photo because you won't have enough data to work with. So let's get started right, let's do it correctly, and we'll go in and start editing in Darktable with our first raw photos. And I'll use some of those from the wedding we're just at and show you how it can properly expose your photos and come out with a perfect image. And as always, I hope you hit that like button. Maybe leave a comment down below on anything else you'd like to see besides the tutorials for Darktable and GIMP. And I hope to see you in the next video. Have a great day.
Turn it up to 11, Mr. Squidward.